Welcome to a solitaire war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name is Grant. Today I'm taking a look at a very interesting game. It took me a while to kind of get this one to the table, but when I finally did, I did very much enjoy what it was doing. I thought it was a very good experience. I thought there was a lot of very interesting things about it. I had my quibbles, and I'll try to talk a little bit about those in the video. But the game is Napoleon from GMT Games. The design is by Ted Racer. And this is a kind of a new style of design. We haven't seen a whole lot of this. I believe that the game that was used as inspiration for this was a game from about 30 years ago, which followed, I believe, an individual soldier in the Napoleonic army. But this game uses some of those mechanics and concepts to create an overall historical view at the life, not the entire life, but the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. There's a look at the cover. I'm going to go ahead and move that out of the way. But the kind of the thesis of this game is that you are following along the life of Napoleon Bonaparte from the moment that he is a commander until he ultimately becomes the self-proclaimed emperor of France, and as he is dominating the European continent during the end of the Napoleonic Wars. The game uses cards, so it is a card game. It is not a card-driven game, meaning you'll look at the cards, there are no op points on these cards. There's really no events necessarily. These cards are more one-off experiences, things like an expedition, a military campaign, an encounter with a leader in the political realm, even in the personal life of Napoleon Bonaparte, where you are going through various decks, and that deck will change every single year and will also add in new cards once you hit specific years, or when you hit specific events, like when you get rid of Robespierre and you overthrow, you perpetrate a coup and take over as first consul. Those are the kind of things that are going on in this game. It is trying to manage and deal with those cards as they come out. One of the other things I will point your attention to, and we'll go a little bit more into detail about this, up in the upper left-hand part of the board is the general records track. There is a year track at the bottom. There are points where additional card decks are going to be added. And you can see up in the right-hand area up there, there are different decks that have year numbers on them. 1807, 1809, 1810, 1814. And then there's a bigger deck called Abdication. Then you have your three major decks. You have your commander deck, which basically deals with Napoleon's first 8 or 10 years, basically from 1793 to approximately 1802, although you can hurry that along a little bit if the right cards come out. Then you have the first consul deck, which basically follows Napoleon for about 4 or 5 years, 1803 through 1807, give or take. And then the Emperor deck, which goes from 1807 to 1821 and is the end of the game. The game can end at any moment. There are various cards that when you fail those tests, you will lose the game. Either Napoleon dies in combat, he is captured, loses a major campaign that he cannot lose, because if he lost that historically, he would have just been a footnote. But what you're trying to do is strategically maneuver through all of these cards, trying to build up your accumulation of resources. You have administrative, diplomatic, and political. You're trying to build glory. The gold marker is for glory. Your ultimate goal is to score as many glory as you possibly can. You can actually get up to well over 100. Actually, I think it maxes out at 100. You can flip that marker over to it's 51 through 100, but then at that point you can't really get any more. You get glory from a whole bunch of things like winning campaigns, defeating political enemies, being wounded in combat without being killed, gaining the respect of your men, those kinds of things, accomplishing small expeditions where you're sending your commanders out to take care of those things for you. Those all are going to combine to give you glory or victory points. And you're trying to do as well as you can possibly do and then compare yourself to the historical Napoleon. So that's the kind of the premise of the game. What I wanted to do today was kind of give you an overview of the different parts. Want to look at the cards, the different types. We'll look at the board very quickly, and then we'll discuss some of the resource management. And then what I want to do is help you understand what kind of decision points or decisions that players have, where those happen, when they occur, and then how those decisions will ultimately affect what you can and can't do. What I would say this game is not, and I had kind of thought it might be, would be somewhat of a choose your own adventure style of game. What I mean by that is maybe you draw a card, it's a dilemma, and you have one or two different ways to deal with that. You can deal with it politically, use your political resources and some of your other leaders to help you overcome that. Or you could do it militarily, where you stage a coup or do certain things. Or you could sit in the back. And so I had thought there might be 2 or 3 choices for a lot of these cards, but really there aren't many choices for the cards. Really the choice is, do I do this or do I just discard it? Do I use a bunch of my resources now, knowing that I've got to survive ultimately a campaign at the end of the turn, which is a combat, a military campaign? Or do I spend some of these resources now to gain more glory or overcome something, knowing that I'm not going to have access to those near the end of the round, or even the end of the game as you kind of use them and they whittle down? But let's go ahead and look at the cards. So what I would say is there are about 5 or so different types of cards. So let me give you an example or some examples. Here is a look at commanders. So as you know, Napoleon had military commanders that he would dispatch to take care of specific engagements or use on the battlefield. Those commanders are represented by a number of cards, and here I've got about 8 of them. Some of these I should have lost out of the deck, but I think I gathered them all together just to look at them. But real quick, what I want to do is show you the cards themselves. They have a when revealed kind of effect. They show whether he's an independent commander and then what his loyalty is. Why that is important is certain commanders you cannot send off on their own to do these expeditions. You have to send one of these independent and loyal commanders. So that's kind of a unique element. And then it gives you an effect. What is this commander good at doing? So you can see here on this card, when you use this guy in a campaign or on an expedition, you can spend -1 administrative point to use a +1 DRM in any one combat round. So that's kind of how these commanders work. This one you can spend a political point to get a +1 DRM in any one combat round. And you're going to have all different types. Some are going to give you only in the first round of a combat, or some are going to give you higher ones. This is a very good one to say, -1 admin to use, and then you get a choice. +1 DRM in any one combat round, or +3 DRM in the second round of combat, then he will be removed from play. So when you do these campaigns, if you do not defeat them the first combat round, you're going to be defeated, basically, and you're going to lose some glory points, and then you're going to gain a -1 DRM in future rounds. But unless the card says you lose if you lose this, you can continue doing round after round of combat. Also, some of the campaign modifiers, and this is one that is very hated, and you'll notice this one never goes out of the game. So this is going to be revealed time and time again. This one is a campaign modifier that modifies the campaign that you're on, and it says Napoleon must achieve 1 additional victory to win this campaign. Enemy reserve. So that is a horrible one because it makes you have to win twice to defeat a campaign, which means you're going to have access to more commanders, more administrative or political resources to use these commanders. And if you don't, you're not going to win. Or you're going to continue losing glory, hoping to roll very, very high. But you can see each of these have different abilities. Some are better than others. Some are very specific. Some are more generic. But you always have access to them, and you use them in a campaign round. Now, when you use them, they can be wounded. You're going to make a roll, and I think it's on a roll of 1 or a 2. They are wounded and have to be discarded. But that's a type of card, commanders. There are also campaigns, and I've got several here. This is an example of a campaign where if you lose this, the game is going to end. So this is the Austria-Italian campaign. There's going to be a -1 DRM in all combat rounds if Russia is hostile. So you have this diplomacy track in the middle. If Russia is at the bottom, they are considered hostile. Currently, because of a card play, I got them to allied. So I wouldn't get that -1 DRM. That's a good thing. But when you win it, you're going to gain 10 glory points, and you get to play a specific card, the Treaty of Luneville, which is going to give you some more benefits. This is a pretty difficult campaign if Russia is hostile. By the point that it typically comes out, they're not really hostile typically, but sometimes. Now, here's some of the other campaigns, and these are the campaigns, the red ones. That's one thing I would say. They did a really good job graphic design wise to coincide the colors with the different decks. So the red or burgundy is your commander deck, and that coincides with the years on the track. Your blue deck is your first console deck. That coincides here and on these cards. See the blue. And then the Emperor is the gold. I'll go ahead and grab an Emperor card. Archduke Charles, you can see he's gold. But that's really good graphic design, and it helps you keep those things straight. But these are basically 4 campaigns from the first commander deck. They're all fairly different. Sometimes winning a campaign is going to give you negative victory, but it will give you a general other benefit plus 2 political points. This is a campaign that you might want to use one of your advisors. I think this guy allows you to do that. I'm trying to remember. No, I think it's Robespierre. You can get rid of a campaign or an objective if you don't want to do it. But most are going to give you victory points. Some are not. And these are all tied historically to the life of Napoleon and what he was going through. So the campaigns are really kind of your means to gain glory points, and you are building towards these every single round by accumulating commanders, accumulating strategy and tactics cards which give you bonuses or abilities. And then you're going to fight these when you are ready or when they're face up and have been pulled out of the deck, and then you're going to beat those. So we've talked about commanders. We've talked about campaigns. I want to talk about, here, I'll talk about, here, I'll go ahead and grab Josephine. And I'm going to grab one of your political advisors here. These are what I would call personalities or personality cards. I'm not sure they're really referred to that in the game. But you can see here you have 2 cards that will come up, which are your love life, right? Your family box. And there's a box in the upper right hand of the board that has places for your wives, your mistresses, and even your Bonaparte family members. This is your brother, Lucien, and he is going to help you do some different things. But these wives are going to come up. You're going to gain a benefit, and then you're going to have to roll a die. This one says, if revealed before 1798, roll a die. You're going to roll a 10-sider. You can see on a 1 to 8, there is no effect. So nothing is going to happen. If you roll a 9 or a 10, she is going to bear you a legitimate son. You're going to gain glory, and you'll place a legitimate son icon or counter in the upper right. And that's going to benefit you. It's going to play off of future cards and help you, which is kind of cool. That's a cool element of this game. It all kind of ties together, and there's tendrils going in and out, and I very much did enjoy that. But you can see she's going to be your wife, but whether or not she bears you an heir is it's random luck, right? You're going to roll this 10-sided die. I'm going to roll it over here on the side. I rolled a 3. I would have failed. Here's an example of another wife, Desiree Clary. She is also going to give you some benefit. You're going to roll a d10. If it's a 1 through a 7, she's going to break your engagement. You're going to lose glory, and then this card will be removed from play. On an 8 to 10, so this a little bit better than Josephine, she's going to become your wife, roll again, and then you check below. On a 4 to 10, she will bear you a legitimate son. So you can see you have a couple of opportunities to get that accomplished. Here's an example of a political advisor. This is Abbe Sieyès. Politics, you can see on, and then there's a political box here, which is next to the Napoleon box. When he's revealed, you're going to place him in politics. You don't have a choice. It says must. And when Brumaire is played, you're going to gain a +1 to that roll. So that's a good thing, because Brumaire is basically your opportunity to seize control and become first consul. So those are kind of those cards. So we've looked at campaigns, commanders, personalities. I want to go ahead and look at some of the campaign modifiers and the expeditions. You heard me talk about a campaign modifier before. These are cards that are going to come up, and you place them in the campaign modifier box, which is right next to the campaign. They are going to stay there until they say to discard them or something happens or you resolve the campaign. This one's a good one. After resolving a campaign, no matter the outcome, whether you win or lose, you're going to roll a die. On a 1 to 3, there's no effect. A 4 to 10, you gain +5 glory. You'll notice the title of this one is Capturing a General. And once that is played, you're going to get rid of the card. So it's going to get out of the deck. It's going to thin your deck down. But there's a whole host of these campaign modifiers. Some are good, some are bad, some are neutral, some give you choices, some are required. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was expeditions. So once again, expeditions are considered minor geographical areas that you are going into and doing something. That is where you can send an independent commander to kind of represent you and give you benefits. But similar to a campaign, when you reveal it, you're going to roll a die and remove this card from play with no effect on a 1 to 6. Otherwise, must immediately resolve an expedition. So if I roll a 7 or higher, I'm going to then roll a die again, and 5 or less, I fail. 6 or more, I gain glory. So there's a way to get more glory. This is another one, artillery expedition, must immediately resolve with no supporting commander, so you can't use commanders. Basically just a 50-50 die roll. 1 to 5, no effect. 6 to 10, +5 glory. Here's an example. Piedmont must immediately resolve an expedition with no supporting commanders. So a lot of times you can't use commanders, but sometimes you can. 1 to 5 failure, 6 to 10 success. And those are examples of little expeditions. Those are just opportunities for you to gain additional glory and help your cause out. The other type of card that I want to show you, and there's a couple more, but I'm not going to go into huge highlight of it. These are immediate effect cards, and these are just random little one-off events. Most of them, once they happen, they get removed from play. This one says sidelined, must -1 political point and then removed, so you just lose a political point. Army of the Interior must gain +2 political points, then remove this card from play. You just gain a benefit. Scabies, -3 glory, and then remove this card from play. Napoleon the Spy. When revealed, if Robespierre's Fall has been played, and those are cards that you'll want to track, it's number 29, you lose a political point. Otherwise, if it hasn't been played, you gain a political point and then roll a die. If you roll a 1, -5 glory. If you roll 2 to a 10, no effect. You don't want Napoleon to be captured because the game then ends. Now, let's say you went ahead and rolled a die, because you have to. You can't get rid of this. There's no card that gets rid of this. Let's say I rolled a 1. Oh my gosh, I rolled a 1. I have what is called Napoleon's Luck. This is a chit that you have available each year that you can use one time. It gains you a reroll. So I would flip that over and use it. I would roll again. Oh, look, I got an 8. Therefore, this has no effect, and I move on. So those are other types of cards. And I'm basically showing you the commander deck cards because I actually lost this game after becoming first consul. I think it was in 1800, and I lost that Italian campaign, the Austrian campaign. I lost this one. I tried to re-roll, but I lost again. And that's okay. Sometimes those things happen, and that's the way the game is. So that's kind of an overview of the different cards that are available in the game. There are other cards. There are country cards that are going to affect negative effects. Here's Nelson for Britain. You must place this in the Britain box when revealed. You're going to gain -2 glory per year while first consul and emperor. And that's just terrible. You're basically just losing 2 glory. And there are actually markers, and I should have put one, but here are markers that will remind you to gain +2 glory or -2 glory from cards. There's all different types, which is a beneficial thing. But you've got leaders of different countries. You've got, for instance, the Americas. Certain things can happen there. All of these are going to tie in to give you opportunities to gain glory, gain benefits, and other things. The other part of the game is the diplomatic part of the game. You can actually try to conquer these countries if they are hostile towards you and you have the right numbers of cards that have come out. You can go ahead and try to do a campaign very hard, but you can take them out, gaining more glory and getting them out of your hair, at least for the time being. But you're trying to keep most of these countries as your allies, but occasionally you want them to be hostile so you can go ahead and take them out. So those are other types of cards that I didn't necessarily cover, but I think you get the general concept of the game. We've also got the boxes. There's a handy dandy DRM tracking track for your campaigns or other roles. Very, very nice. Here's your diplomacy table, your domestic politics table. That's another aspect of the game. Your sequence of play and your campaign combat resolution, all printed directly on the board. And then you have great little play aids as well. Actually, you don't have great little play aids. The play aid is on the back of the playbook, which does have some of those charts. But that's kind of the way the game is set up. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk to you about before I start telling you some of the concerns I have and some of the very cool things that I think. So I'm going to move this over here a little bit so that you can see this card draw track. So each year, the game is going to progress where you have 5 card draws from this deck. And you're going to pull those out and you're going to do one card. That is your card draw. Then you're going to move that down and continue doing that. One by one, you're going to do these cards. Now, when you come to your fifth card that you finally pulled, you will look in the sixth card spot, and this can go all the way up to 12. It can happen, it doesn't happen. I'm just going to be straight with you. I've never been higher than 7 or 8, maybe 9. But this is a big advantage because you can get more cards out, more commanders, get rid of the bad cards, and start churning up some of the better cards. But you'll notice on the sixth space, it says DR1. So you're going to roll, after you've done your fifth card draw, which every turn you can do at least 5, you're going to roll a die. And if your die roll is higher than a 1, you will be able to continue and draw that card. So you roll a die. I rolled a 3. Really nice little green 10-sider that has a 10 rather than a 0. So I would move forward. I now get to draw that 6th card. I do it. Then on the 7th card, it's a DR of 1 to 2. It gets harder and harder as you go along. Hey, I rolled a 7. I get to draw that 7th card. I do its effect. Then I look at 8. It's DR 1 through 3. I rolled a 2. That would stop us there, but it does continue going. 9th card draw is a 1 to 4. 10th is a 1 to 5. 11th is a 1 to 6. And 12 is a 1 to 7. So I would have been able to get a 12th card with that roll. I really enjoy that part of the mechanic because it's kind of that unknown, right? You can prepare, but you think, oh man, I just need a couple more draws. And it's up to a random die roll. I like it. I think that's very, very well done. The sequence of play consists of setting up your year card deck every single turn. Card deck phase is what it says. So you're going to go through, you're actually going to look on your, so in 96, you're going to add, here, and I'll show you. Right here, they have these handy dandy little dividers. You're going to add the 1796 cards to this draw deck in the year 1796. You're also going to go through that deck, and there are cards here that say when this card becomes available. Also, when the card will leave the deck. So this card, Messina, will leave in 1813 if it hasn't been played yet. The Rosetta Stone, which is a cool card, is going to be removed if card number 46 is played or you are first consul. So each round you have to go through and kind of build your deck, add in new cards, shuffle them all up. The discards that you discarded. Now, what is a discard? This card says do the event and then discard this card with no effect otherwise. So that's going to be discarded to the discard pile. Those will be shuffled back in and will come back into your deck. So it's cool that you're building your card deck every single year, but it's also somewhat of it drives me nuts because you're always going to miss a card. You're always going to overlook a card. You're always going to forget to put a card in. It's a bit frustrating. Now, I will say I've played 4 full times. I'm better at it now than I was after my first play. So you do kind of learn, oh, these cards are going to go out, and you learn what to look for. That also is a very unique aspect, though, to the design, and I very much enjoy the way that Ted did that to create kind of a different experience. So what do I like about that? In addition to the way it is created, I like that some of those cards you're never going to see. You're going to get rid of those cards before you even played them, and therefore your each play is going to be somewhat slightly different. I think that's a very genius way of having handled this. I think it works very well and creates, once again, a very interesting opportunity. So that's the way so back to one other comment, and I made this in my kind of preamble, and I'm on my 30th minute here, and I'm going to start wrapping this up. Choices. There are some choices in the game. As I mentioned, the way you use your resources, whether you use a political leader to get rid of an expedition or not, whether you do a card or not. Sometimes they can say you don't have to do them. If it says when revealed, you have to do it. But if it doesn't say when revealed, you have a choice. And I think that's cool. But I find that a bit concerning because I really feel like I'm not making significant decisions. That's where I kind of wanted that choose your own style of adventure. And this is the first game in, I think, a continuing series, because this is done very, very well. I think that Ted's going to look at other titles. In fact, in the interview we did with him a year and a half ago, he talked about George Washington. So looking at George Washington, the father of the United States of America, president, commander-in-chief, all of that. That will be very, very cool. That will be one that I will immediately be drawn to. So historically, you're going to either be drawn to these games or you're either not. Maybe you don't care about Napoleon and his life. I get it. I find it fascinating. Therefore, I was really drawn to it and very much interested in this game. Another one that he floated was Elizabeth, meaning the Queen of England, which could be very interesting. He also kind of mentioned FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the leader of the United States, president of the United States during the Great Depression, leading into World War II, and then died 90% of the way through that. But all three or four of those would be extremely interesting. And I think the system is really wide open to allow for a lot of different games. And I'm very much all for that. I also believe that game system will mature and develop further as Ted kind of sees what is working, listens to feedback and comments. I hope he doesn't get defensive, but understand people have opinions and they're going to share that. I played the game. I enjoyed it. I played it 4 times. I will continue playing it because, frankly, I have still not gotten very far into the Emperor deck. I keep losing because I'm careless. First Consul deck's very different than the Commander deck. Emperor deck, very, very different than both of them. And I want to experience it more, and I'm kind of gaining my experience and using my chops, and I think I'm getting ready to be able to do better, I think, into that Emperor deck, and I'm looking forward to that. But I do think the system will mature and grow and expand, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I also know that there is going to be a 90-card expansion for this game that is supposedly going to be announced on the P500 in or on or about December of 2024. I don't know when you're watching this video. It may be the spring of 25. So you may be aware of that. But that's going to expand this experience, make it even that much more replayable, and add to what you can or cannot experience and do. But I enjoy the game. The production is outstanding, knocked it out of the park. The cards are great, knocked it out of the park. The different types of cards I think are very interesting. The inclusion of the domestic politics, the diplomacy tracks, very well done. Love how you track your family members, political advisors, and other things in these different boxes. And I also love, and I didn't really talk a lot about these cards, but here's some of those really immediate effect bad cards, like Robespierre's Fall. Here is Under Arrest. You know, if you fail these, you're going to lose the dang game. This is your coup opportunity to become first consul, Brumaire, and you've got to follow these along. And these are going to come up in the deck. There's Robespierre, who actually is your friend for a while. You can choose to ignore one campaign or expedition. Remember, I showed you those campaigns that aren't great, and you might want to decide to ignore them. But you're also going to gain DRMs on various events, like Under Arrest. This is that Under Arrest one. So if Robespierre's out, you're going to gain that plus DRM. But he's going to hinder you if he is out and Brumaire comes up. So you got to be aware of that. There's opportunities to get rid of him, and you need to be aware of that. That is what I do enjoy about the game. These kind of crossroads cards is what I would every single one of these is very, very important to the life of Napoleon. And had things gone differently, he would have been a footnote to history. And I think these cards really help solidify the thesis of this design and game, and really reinforces what Ted was trying to accomplish. And there are cards like that all throughout the game, in the first console deck, in the Emperor deck, etc. There's tons of these kinds of things that you've got to be ready for. And if you don't take advantage of them, you're going to lose the game. So those are kind of I'm going to move back over here to the center. Those are my thoughts on the game. I thought the play aids were very well done. And what I mean by the play aids, I thought the rules were very clearly written. There is a playbook that helps you kind of run through a couple of rounds. Very, very helpful. There are tons of people that have already done instructional videos on this. I'm not going to do that. The game isn't overly long. I'm trying to remember 1 to 4 hours, and that would be to get through all three of the big decks. Most of my games have come in 90 minutes to 2 hours because I've only gotten through the Commander and the first console decks. I've just not done very well. I'm not very good at this game, and that's okay. That actually should show you, if I'm not very good at it and I keep wanting to play it, there is definitely something here. So I'm going to continue playing this game to experience it, to learn, grow, and better strategize so that I can do better and better and experience all of the intricacies and elements of particularly of the Emperor deck. So there you have it. Those are kind of my jumbled, modeled thoughts on I, Napoleon. I very much enjoy this. I'd really give it high marks. I would recommend it to anybody that loves narrative style, narrative creating, narrative driven solitaire war games. Definitely very cool. Some people are not going to like this, and I think you're not going to like it if you don't like cards, if you don't like randomness, because rolling die, the dice hate me. They always do. I just rolled a 7. But you're going to have failures. That's why you do have this where you can mitigate it, your Napoleon's luck. You also have modifiers, remember, from your political leaders, your wife, your chief of staff, the administrative folks, your commanders, and all different types of things. You've got to utilize those. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts, or at least my initial thoughts on I, Napoleon from GMT Games. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Go out, find a copy of this game, get it played. I do think you will learn and enjoy the experience. So thank you very much for watching. I've been Grant for the Player's Aid.